Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. We are back once again to continue our WrestleMania project. We are this time working on WrestleMania 29, which took place on April 7th, 2013, in East Rutherford, New Jersey, at MetLife Stadium. The announced attendance for this event was 74,300. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the first match of the evening. Per usual, we will go through every single match, let you know what we think of it, and then, of course, at the very end, give you an overall rating and an overall kind of how we feel about this particular WrestleMania 29. The first match of the evening is Sheamus, Randy Orton, and The Big Show going up against the Shield, making their debut. Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose, and Roman Reigns, who the latter three have not yet been defeated on the main roster. KP, curious to get your thoughts on this opening contest. Per usual, how it compares as an opening contest compared to other manias, and curious to get your thoughts on the Shield. I know if you've been following this WrestleMania project up until now, you know that this is still part of my gap, and I know this is part of your kind of wheelhouse now. Curious to hear your thoughts on the Shield overall, and how you felt their WrestleMania debut went.
Yeah, so I think you look back at the rest of the openers for WrestleManias up until this point, and I think some of them have been quite spectacular. A lot of them have been sort of like misses sort of thing. I think this one was kind of decent. It was kind of good. It was a pretty good tag team contest. It was nothing special, but it was a fun start to WrestleMania. I thought the Shield looked fantastic. So this is obviously at a time, like you said, where they're undefeated and they're just absolutely, just in their element, really, causing havoc and just being menaces, the three of them. And they really showed how sort of closely knit they are as a group in this matchup because there are moments throughout the contest where you saw really, really smart tag team chemistry from the Shield. Lots of like frequent tags, moments of like teamwork working together and things, just the strategy coming into play, tagging in specific people for certain moments. That like showed quite strongly for me, to be fair. And yeah, it was a pretty good sort of like debut for them on the WrestleMania stage. I think they delivered in quite a strong way. Obviously, you look on the other side of the ring there, and you've got the three, very big superstars in Randy Orton, Sheamus, and Big Show. Former world champions, each of them at this point. And yeah, that's obviously a very big, a very big trio to go up against. But a well knit group like the Shield going up against three very good individuals sometimes has a big difference. And commentary did allude to this as well throughout the matchup, and it played a part in the finish as well because we see Big Show and we see Big Show in a bit of a situation here because Sheamus looks to tag in Big Show, but Randy Orton, he's sort of like not on the apron at this point, but as Sheamus is going towards Big Show, Randy Orton gets up onto the apron like really, really quickly, tags himself in onto Sheamus. Big Show's just looking on as if to say, well, what's going on here? This isn't the first time that Big Show's been overlooked as a tag in the matchup. It happened on a few occasions prior to this. So this is the latest edition. And yeah, Randy goes through his motions, taking down Dean Ambrose with a series of signature moves like he normally does, just rolling through the through the 1, 2, 3s and that kind of stuff. And he's looking for an RKO when he gets to that sort of stage of his sequence. And Seth Rollins, he is on the apron. He goes for a springboard attack of some description, and he gets an RKO for his troubles. So that's the RKO from Orton right there. We then see Roman Reigns coming on in and spearing Orton, and that allows Ambrose to get the cover. But this is happening literally whilst Big Show is stood on the apron watching and just staring down at Randy Orton as if to say, like, I don't care. Like, you can get pinned. Who am I to care? So, yeah, he probably could have come in and, broke the situation up and could have kept the match flowing, but Big Show decided not to. And, yeah, maybe he felt a little bit, undermined there by Randy Orton. But once the match is all said and done, Shield get out of there pretty quickly. They hightail it into the crowd. And we then see a Big Show hit both Sheamus and Randy Orton with a knockout punch before he then walks away, and that ends this first segment and first match. So yeah, in terms of the match itself, it was pretty good. I quite enjoyed it for what it was worth. I loved the way the Shield worked together here. So I gave it a 7 out of 10. It was a good start to WrestleMania. It wasn't an incredible start. It wasn't a bad start. It was a good start. So I think that's fair to say. Nick, how did you rate our opener here for WrestleMania 29, and what did you make of the Shield here on their WrestleMania debut?
Yeah, I thought they looked really good. You can kind of tell, obviously, even though I wasn't watching at the time, I know pretty much every detail about them because they're talked about, referred to so much, and the infamous turn that's talked about so much as well. You know a good majority of it. So yeah, that looked really good here. You could tell they were going to be a big deal, obviously, as you kind of alluded to, beating the three men that they are beating here. Obviously, that's a pretty big deal. Show doing one of his 3000s face heel turns. Um, at least I guess he had a little bit of reason for it, but yeah, I thought that was a very interesting decision. Just have him standing there, yeah, over the whole ordeal, while the Shield kind of took care of business. But yeah, I thought it was a decent opening contest. Pretty much exactly the same thing you're saying. Um, I've seen a lot worse and I've seen better. So yeah, I give this one a 6.5 out of 10. Yeah, just crazy to think that we're kind of now entering that kind of period where a lot of the men on this WrestleMania um, are still active today. So we're getting close to current day, which is kind of crazy. This obviously being the 29th video we've done here. So yeah, 6.5 out of 10 for me. And yeah, decent start to WrestleMania 29. The next contest of the evening is a vastly different feel to it. Big meaty man, if you will. Mark Henry going up against Ryback. And hopefully, going into this, we were not expecting a 5-star classic. If you were, listeners, that one was probably on you. This is the definition of two powerhouses, and that's what we get here. The match backstory, or the story leading up to this, if you will, it was them having that bench press contest, and Ryback was about to beat Henry's record, and then Mark takes the bar apart so he could not do so. Um, so very, very short, but here we are. KP, thoughts on this contest? Yeah, this isn't typically a match that is something we would normally kind of chase, if you will, but curious to hear what you made of it.
Well, it's going to come to no surprise to you that yeah, I didn't particularly like this one. I thought it was pretty damn boring, if I'm going to be honest here. It was just really slow. And a very physical contest, as you would expect from these two behemoths. But it was, yeah, just no technical display whatsoever, which you don't expect from these two, like you've obviously glossed over already. But it's just something that, like you also said, I just don't normally enjoy. So I'm sort of reciting here just in my own sort of way. But yeah, it just felt more like a test of strength here, really, between the two men, rather than a matchup, that you can sort of really grit your teeth into. And that was the majority of the feel for this one. Also, the finish absolutely sucked, and it felt really flat. Um, like just the way it sort of took place, it was almost as if to say, "Oh, well, that's it. Okay, fair enough then." I mean, I get it. Like, I understand how that can be a finish, but at the same time, it doesn't make it good. So let's talk a little bit more about that. Ryback, he's looking to hit Henry with his shell shock finishing maneuver. But as he lifts Henry up, he's close to the ropes, and Henry uses them to sort of just to stop Ryback from actually initiating that shell shock fully. And as he does so, he sort of causes Ryback to lose his balance, sort of thing. And Mark Henry just literally collapses on top of Ryback, crushing him onto the canvas. And we see Ryback just get rolled over, covered by Henry, and that is the 1, 2, 3 and the victory. So whether there was something else that happened here in that process, the commentator said he looked a bit dazed or whatever afterwards. I'm not sure if that was just him selling the finish, though. It might have been. But yeah, regardless to that, though, it just felt a little bit flat for me personally. And that was after a pretty boring, really slow, just no energy, no technical elements contest that I just really wasn't enjoying anyway. We see post-match a situation where Ryback is laid out, and obviously, like I said just then, got crushed by Henry. And Mark Henry is leaving the ring, and this is when Jerry Lawler, I think it was actually, says that he's seemingly unconscious, Ryback. So that's what I was sort of referring to a moment ago. Henry, as he's walking up the ramp, he turns around and he sort of decides to go back in, and he looks to inflict further punishment. Ryback does turn things around, though, and he does then end up hitting his shell shock to have the last laugh over Henry. So, yeah, be that what it will. Ryback's the last man laughing, but he lost the match and Henry won. So yeah, I don't know. Not an all-time classic for me personally. Didn't really like it or enjoy it. I gave it a 3.5 out of 10. It's just not a match for me. Big Meaty Men can be good sometimes, but this one wasn't a good one, in my opinion. What did you think, though, Nick? Was it any better for you or singing off the same hymn sheet?
Yeah, and kind of what I was mentioning there at the beginning, you basically hit all the notes. So, yeah, this is just not the kind of match that we typically saw after, and this one is no exception. The ending, as you alluded to, I actually looked that up because I was curious. Like, almost felt like a botched ending. But of course, it was by design. And if you look into the match much more, you'll see, and this is obviously news to me after this shortly, is Ryback's feud with Cena, apparently. And so he was supposed to be, you would think had momentum going into that. And this was the match ending that they ended up going with. Granted, it was an impressive feat by Ryback to pick Mark Henry up twice. He seemingly did that pretty effortlessly, but to kind of have that silly ending going into a Cena feud, thus began and was born the Ryback conspiracies and all of that in his head. This is where all that started, apparently. So, interesting factoid there. For me, yeah, just not very slow paced and yeah, very weird ending. So, that's pretty much a recipe for a low rating, at least for me, as well. And I did give this one a 3 out of 10. So let's swiftly move on to the next match, and that is Biggie Langston making his main roster debut, televised match debut on WrestleMania. Very interesting way to do that. With Dolph Ziggler, who is the current Money in the Bank holder, with AJ Lee going up against Team Hell No, which is Kane and Daniel Bryan for those WWE Tag Team Championship. KP, thoughts on this one?
This one was a decent match, I would say, to be honest. It was kind of short. That's the main problem with this one, I think. If this one had like another like 5 minutes or so, maybe it would have been a bit better. But yeah, because of what we did see in the time frame, it wasn't really too much to gauge. And this one had a really interesting vibe to it as well, because Daniel Bryan, he just wasn't involved until the finish. So that was also very strange. I'm not sure what that was about, but that's just how the matchup flowed. Kane did a lot of the heavy lifting here for Team Hell No, and yeah, Bryan came in at the very end. So a bit more on that in a minute. But yeah, he saw very little of the action, but he was well received. He had a very, very good reaction once he was, brought into the contest at that very late stage. I thought Dolph and Biggie worked really well together, and I thought the match just flowed quite nicely. It was a simple match, but it was effective. But it's just a shame it was a bit short as well. I don't think anyone really did anything wrong here. It was just a pretty short contest. Like I said, just a matter of needing a bit more time, and then we could have been having a different conversation about it. But yeah, in terms of how the match did take place and go down in the end, we get to a point where the referee is distracted, and Dolph looks to use his Money in the Bank briefcase to smash it against the face of Kane. AJ Lee's obviously been on the outside here, and she's been sort of involved and like cheering on from from the ringside area, and she gives him the briefcase. As Dolph looks to smash Kane over the face, Kane ducks and takes out Ziggler before then tagging in Bryan, who hits a diving headbutt, and that's enough to get the 1, 2, 3. So yeah, wasn't much from Bryan in the end there, but it was very critical and important as the match came to a conclusion. But yeah, like I said, just it was good when it was on. It's just a shame that it wasn't very long. That was the only problem. So yeah, I thought both teams worked quite well together. But yeah, say that what you will. I gave it a 6 out of 10 for what we did see. So yeah, it could have been a lot different, but there's only so much you can do with a certain amount of time. But we'll take it for what it is. Nick, what did you make of this one, though? Yeah, I think the time is the main problem, but did you enjoy it whilst it was on like I did, or maybe not so much?
Yeah, I would agree that the time was a bit short, albeit I really enjoyed the time we did get. So spoiler alert, Team Hell No, which somehow came into my radar. Funny enough, I think the Daniel Bryan stuff that we see here soon is eventually what brought me back to wrestling. So obviously, anything with Daniel Bryan, I'm going to hold in very high regard. This one's no exception. Kane looks really good here. Somehow he's only around 46 here. In my head, he's always much, much older just because he's been around for so long. But he's 46 here and doesn't show any signs. Like you said, pretty much the workhorse of this match, and he looked damn good too. Um, Daniel Bryan looks good as always for the time he's mentioned or shown, and then Dolph Ziggler, is very consistent Dolph Ziggler here. And then Big E, he's made to be quite the powerhouse here too. So really no weak links in this match. Yeah, I think you give him maybe 5 more minutes, 10 more minutes, you start thinking about this match being like a classic. But for how little time they got, I thought it was really good. So yeah, for what that's worth, I gave this one a 7 out of 10. Team Hell No just had so much momentum. They were super over with the crowd. Just quite the dynamic between those two. But yeah, 7 out of 10 for me. I thought this was a lot of fun, but as you alluded to, could have been even that much better. With that, let's go ahead and get into the next match, which has Fandango, who is also making his televised match debut on WrestleMania like Big E, going up against Chris Jericho. I remember Fandango very faintly from his detective gimmick. That's around the time I first started getting into it, I think. But it's very interesting character work here. I didn't realize he debuted as a single star, so that was kind of something I learned from here. But yeah, KP, what did you make of this one, and how is Fandango's career kind of I completely forgot about. So I'm just curious how you made of him. Obviously, you saw his entire career, I guess, in WWE. So yeah, curious to hear what you made of this one going up against Chris Jericho, who's obviously very highly regarded by the both of us.
Yeah, I mean, at this point of probably me when I was younger watching the show, I absolutely loved Chris Jericho. So he's probably although one of my favorites at the time. With Edge no longer on the scene and things. So I think when it comes to Fandango, obviously very fresh. This is literally his in-ring debut in WWE against Chris Jericho at WrestleMania, and to have beaten him is a massive, massive shock. No one expected that. It was, yeah, it was something that came as quite a surprise. And yeah, I'm pretty sure if I remember rightly, just them coming off after this, Jericho never lived this one down. It was always sort of brought up, just in the ebb and flow. And it was quite interesting. But in terms of the match itself, it was a decent contest. One that was mostly controlled by Chris Jericho, the veteran of the contest here. Safe to say, he had a lot of the offense, and yeah, momentum was heavily in his favor for the majority. Fandango did show moments where he'd have some offense and came into it properly as the match sort of got to the late stages. Had like a little bit of a flurry here and there, like hit the odd couple of moves or whatnot. We saw like a really nice kick as Jericho was going for a springboard. Just Fandango catching the face of Jericho really nicely on that maneuver. A couple of leg drops we saw throughout the contest as well from Fandango. And then yeah, with just the way that it came to the finish, Fandango looks for a second leg drop, but he actually misses the second one. Jericho then looks for the Lion Salt, but he doesn't hit it. Instead, Jericho looks for the Walls of Jericho, but Fandango transitions his weight sort of into Jericho. And with Chris's shoulders down onto the mat, he does get the victory via that sort of like cheeky roll up finish. So yeah, Fandango stealing one here, but it was a weird match the way it went down. Like it wasn't bad, but it wasn't sort of like it wasn't your what's the right word I'm looking for here? It wasn't your standard contest. I think it's fair to say. Um, just generally speaking, like the offense was so heavily one sided towards Jericho, that like Fandango really did just have like little bits here and there towards the end. And that was pretty much all it was, but it was enough. So, it worked and it sort of gave him like a sleazy, slimy win. Um, but yeah, it's quite a moment for sure. Quite memorable, I think, is fair to say as well. I gave it a 6 out of 10. Like I say, it was a decent contest, but it wasn't anything special. It wasn't anything bad. So yeah, just kind of all right and okay. What did you make of it though? Fandango isn't someone who I think a lot of people look back on and think, well, one of my favorites. But yeah, in terms of his in-ring debut against Jericho getting a victory, that's arguably one of the great debuts in terms of shock results. So yeah, what did you make of the matchup?
Yeah, when I saw him, I just kind of forgot. Oh yeah, I totally forgot about this guy. But clearly, he was meant to be made out a big deal. That entrance was super long. And I seemed like the crowd couldn't have cared less about it. But yeah, the entrance was super long, and then obviously you beat the likes of someone like Chris Jericho. Obviously that's a big ordeal. I find the character interesting. Um, but yes, in terms of in the match, as you kind of mentioned, it was the shock value. Outside of the shock value, I don't think I think this was felt like something that probably should have happened on like a weekly episode. I didn't feel mania worthy, even though he did just get the win. But outside of the entrance for Fandango, I didn't really see any other great highlights for it. So unfortunately, this one felt like a pretty big dud to me. Gave this one a 4.5 out of 10. Chris Jericho is capable of much better, and yeah, this just didn't feel like a WrestleMania worthy match to me. Getting into the next match, we have Jack Swagger going up against Alberto Del Rio for the World Heavyweight Championship. Um, yeah, very interesting dynamic. I guess Jack Swagger is accompanied by Coulter, that plays a bit of a dynamic here. But yeah, KP, I know you are not a big Alberto Del Rio fan, so curious to see what you made of this one going up against Jack Swagger.
Yeah, growing up as a kid, I absolutely loathed and detested Alberto Del Rio with every fiber of my being, and I've just gained absolutely zero respect for him as time goes on. But alas, I'll be professional and put up a review here. In terms of this matchup, what I will say is, leading from what I just mentioned a moment ago, this is possibly one of the least hyped world championship matches in WrestleMania history, in my opinion. Like, I'm not ever gonna think, oh, do you remember Alberto Del Rio against Jack Swagger for the World Heavyweight Championship? Like, it's not exactly a world title image that screams out world title. So yeah, it is what it is. In that sense, let's get into the actual stuff here. So the match was okay. It was hard for me to judge properly because of what I've said. But yeah, it was very back and forth. I had a lot of animosity throughout. You could sense, how much these two guys really did dislike each other, and the build sort of played a part into how the match went down, which was, I guess, good from that sense as well. Um, it was somewhat technical too, I think, from both men. It they both showed some sort of like class in the ring, like in bits here and there. Not like a completely amazing technical grappling contest that we've seen in the past, but it had like shades of like little bits of those in like parts here and there. Just a little bit of nice technical wrestling at times. Interferences, like you said, yeah, with Zeb Coulter did play a bit of a part here and there. So playing into the finish here, we do see Zeb Coulter and Ricardo Rodriguez have a little bit of an interaction on the outside of the ring. It eventually results in Ricardo Rodriguez crutches sort of like being taken from him, and he sort of like sneaks away to the other part of the ring, just like try and get away from the other people. And we see a point where Zeb Coulter has a crutch, and there's a bit of a face off with him and somebody else. And with that situation being happening, Jack Swagger tried to take advantage, so he attacks Del Rio from behind, and he sends Del Rio into the ring. But when Swagger goes in to sort of like further capitalize, he then gets caught in a cross armbar by Del Rio, sort of like a last ditch attempt to sort of like get the job done here. This is after Swagger has really weakened down Del Rio, so he's sort of just like doing anything he can to get a result. And yeah, the armbar gets locked in, and it's enough to make Swagger tap, and Del Rio retains his championship. So yeah, just in terms of how this one really sort of like led to that point. Like I said, it was okay and it was fine. Like, it had some nice little bits here and there, but it's just not a world championship matchup of caliber, in my opinion. It's just this could have been for the US title. I think everyone would have been fine with that. Looking back on, and what are we now? We're probably like 15 years off from this, near enough. So yeah, I think when you're looking like that, it's for the world championship, this is a dud contest. So yeah, it didn't have that feel to it whatsoever, from my opinion. Watching it even at the time when I was younger, like, I don't remember ever being excited about this contest. Like, even with my hatred for Del Rio, I didn't want Jack Swagger to win either. So you know what I mean? It's like one of those situations where it's like you lose either way. So yeah, I gave this one a 6 out of 10. It wasn't the worst match you'll ever see, but it wasn't anything that's going to grip you. And because it's a world title matchup and it doesn't feel like one, that's a pretty bad image to have. So yeah, 6 out of 10 from me. could have been a lot better. What about you though, Nick? Does this strike you as a World Heavyweight Championship matchup? Was it good though? Did you maybe think it was nice? I know we do like some technical wrestling, and it had bits of that, but yeah, it's not like your all-time classic. But what did you make of it?
And think that's kind of the issue here is that, neither of these guys I think are like heavily favorited, and that's even before the stuff about Del Rio after, his career. Um yeah, this and Jack Swagger, funny enough, is you're not a fan of Del Rio. I've never seen anything from Jack Swagger that makes me think or understand why he was he was supposed to be a really big deal. I've never seen a match from him that had me thinking, oh, I get it. So kind of in the same boat on the opposite end, I suppose, with Swagger. I've never quite understood that. Um, yeah, this match, that had the crush was the most interesting part of it. But outside of that, yeah, kind of paint by numbers. Didn't really feel Yeah, I would agree with you. It didn't really feel like it was a championship quality match, especially the World Heavyweight Championship at that. The interference there, and Del Rio's help was on crutches, so um, and he was clearly over with the crowd, and Del Rio being a face was interesting too. But yeah, all of that just not a great match from my end. I wanted to like it, but yeah, it didn't feel like it kind of delivered that WrestleMania quality. I gave it a 5.5 out of 10. So yeah, not ideal, especially for that World Heavyweight Championship. But let's go ahead and get into something that's a lot more quality. I think the rest of the WrestleMania card does deliver that. The first of those matches is CM Punk with Paul Heyman, who doing some double work here tonight, double duty, if you will, going up against the Undertaker, who is currently sitting at 20-0. Punk throwing Paul Bearer's urn to Heyman before the match. That one got me. I don't know why, but that cracked me up. But yeah, curious to get your thoughts on this one. Obviously, Taker has his fair share of duds on the WrestleMania stage, but it's fair to say he's on a pretty big hot streak. KP, do you feel that streak continues here? And what did you make of this match overall?
Yeah, I think we've been pretty critical over Undertaker because obviously he is the phenom. You know, you look at WrestleMania, you look at Undertaker sort of like in the same conversation, and he's definitely had some matches that haven't really delivered. But in the past, like what 3, 4, 5 years to this, yeah, I mean, they've all been pretty damn great. And I think this one delivers on that as well. Was it quite as good as the Shawn Michaels and Triple H matches? I guess you could say probably not quite as much, but it was. I don't know. Maybe it was up there with one of the Triple H contests. As a minimum. But yeah, just generally speaking, it was very, very good. It was a great match. Both men just had the crowd eating out their hands throughout the entire contest, pretty much. We saw Punk showing signs of desperation here and there. You know, knowing the situation, the gravity of what was actually, possibly going to happen if he had won. So yeah, I think just one of those desperation moments we saw him go for an elbow drop on the Taker on the announce table, and that didn't quite have like the perfect landing for him. I think he did catch his knee when he collided with the announce table and Undertaker, so a little bit high risk stuff there. And yeah, it didn't end there though, because we saw at one point Undertaker looking for a last ride onto CM Punk, and he happened to just grab the urn, which was nearby at the time, and just sort of like smash it against the back of the neck of Undertaker, back of the head. So that was sort of like another desperate attempt. So you can see Punk was like really going down deep into what he needed to do, sort of thing. But yeah, there was some really, really great moments and just like big kickouts, both from both men really as well. Made for some nice drama. Just a really nice flowing match and a good one to have in Taker's collection is what I've got written down. Because it was, it's a solid matchup. It's probably definitely on the upper side of this contest. And like you mentioned, this has been like a bit of a purple patch for Taker in WrestleMania, because I think you have to go back quite a way to find his last bad match, or like maybe not amazing match, I think is actually the right term, because he's had some really, really good contests. So yeah, they've all just like been strung together really nicely. But yeah, in terms of how this one went to the finish, we see Undertaker countering a GTS attempt from CM Punk, who was looking for his second GTS at that point, and Undertaker delivers this tombstone power driver, which is almost like it's just a snap tombstone. It's like it's a really really quick delivered one. It's sort of almost like straight out of the GTS attempt, and then like just transitions him over really nicely, and just immediately just like quickly jumps into the tombstone. It's a different tombstone than what we're normally used to. We're obviously used to the presentation and the very the very ominous sort of moment that's you're waiting for him to just like just jump very raw, just like I guess lift his knees up and just jump down. But yeah, this one was just nothing like that. It was just straight up straight into it, and it was yeah, it was quite a moment for sure. But that gets Taker the win here, and he goes 21-0 at WrestleMania, which is a very important win in the series of Undertaker's WrestleMania matches. But yeah, it was a good match. I really really enjoyed this one. It wasn't quite at the height of the absolute pinnacle, but it was definitely nearing that sort of area. I gave it a 9 out of 10. Just solid performance from both men. Really good matchup. Nick, what did you make of this one? Where does it lie in your sort of standings for Undertaker's WrestleMania matches? And how did it compare to like this like patch that he's been in, where it's been just quality after quality after quality, drama after drama, just amazing matches. Where did it sit for you?
Yeah, I really like this one. Probably or definitely match of the night for me. And the reason I say that is because it felt like the crowd were finally really into it. I know it's not all on them, but up until this point, granted, give the crowd benefit of the doubt. There wasn't really a ton to cheer for outside of the Team Hell No match, maybe, and the Shield. Really wasn't much to go on about, but this was definitely kind of the wake up moment for them. Really good contest here. Punk playing a great heel here as well. I kind of wish he would play a heel in today's current product, but the crowd is pretty split here too. Chance for both Taker and Punk. Uh, that Punk spot trying to jump through the announce table that looked really rough, whether by design or not. Taker getting back in the ring at the 9.5 count. I'm just sitting there thinking, imagine if that was the way they ended the streak. How terrible. A The GTS to the tombstone as Taker's bouncing off the ropes to the Punk kick out. That was incredible moment. Something about when Taker pins is seen there, lower left hand corner. When Taker pins someone and has the tongue out, does the eyes roll back bit, when someone kicks out of that, if for some reason the crowd just pops so hard because it makes sense too, like for the longest time that was the end of the match. If you saw that, that was the end. But over the last few years, you started to see people kick out of that, and every time the crowd pops for it. But yeah, that was a great moment as well. The amount of reversals at the end of this match was absolutely incredible. And I voiced my opinion. I don't love the in-ring work of CM Punk. From what I've seen, I know I have more work to do on my end, so that's I'll take some of that blame. But for me and what I've seen from CM Punk, this is by far his best match that I've seen. So for whatever that's worth, I thought this was an incredible contest, and obviously Taker does end up getting the win here, as you kind of painted out. But yeah, 20-0 to 21-0, and I don't like the ominous tone you used. The significance of that 21-0. We have another week to process that, and I suppose we can get to it when we get to it. But yeah, for now, the greatest streak in WrestleMania is the Undertaker. Maybe that's why this one's kind of, I don't know, has that bittersweet kind of feel to it. But yeah, 9.5 out of 10 for me. Taker getting his 21st victory on the grandest stage of them all. Getting into the next match, I think probably a controversial match on its face. You have two of the biggest heels, two of the biggest known for burying talent, being, you know, controversial is, I guess, the point I'm making here. You have Brock Lesnar with Paul Heyman working his second shift of the night, going up against Triple H, who is kind of accompanied by Shawn Michaels here in a no holds bar match. And the stipulation, if you will, here is Triple H loses, his career is over. So, KP, you know me, I'm a bigger fan of Triple H, and I think probably most when it comes to in ring work. And neither of us are a fan of Brock Lesnar. I think that's very cut and dry. We've made that quite obvious. But yeah, curious to see what you made of this one.
This match is quite hard to really get like a good review of. It's kind of good and bad at the same time. So like I found that the matchup started like really physically, which you would expect from these two men based on what's happened going into this one and the build and just, I guess the builds of both of them as physical specimen. Yeah, you expect something, hot out the gates, and we did see that because it was quite like pretty big to begin with, so that was quite nice. And it all led up until this spot where Triple H goes through an announce table from Lesnar. And at this point, you're thinking, oh, okay, well, this one started off really, really hot. This is great. And from that moment there on, it just starts to feel really dull and lackluster for a large part of the middle part of the contest. As to why that really happened, I'm not entirely sure. Maybe they want to drag out a little bit. Maybe they just needed to sort of like have a little bit of a slow bit because of what was coming later on. I'm not entirely certain, but yeah, from what they were doing at the time, they were going through the motions, and it did just feel like they were really just like, taking their sweet time with everything, and it just felt like really just like, I don't know, just there wasn't really too much going on despite what was happening in the ring, which is quite interesting. It wasn't until we got to we're going probably at least like 15 minutes forward now here, probably maybe 10. I'm not entirely certain. But either way, when the Kimura lock gets locked in from Lesnar, then we start moving away from what was seemingly a bit of a snooze fest in that like middle part of the contest. The crowd as well, they seemed really uninterested for that large sort of drawn out bit in the middle. So I think maybe that sort of reflected what I was sort of thinking at the time as well. Because you could at times you could hear a pin drop. It was really weird. It was a weird vibe and energy in the arena. Based off what we just saw in the last matchup, with Undertaker and CM Punk, they were going wild. They were literally going crazy. So yeah, as to why that sort of then led to this being so quiet and a bit dull, I'm not entirely certain, but maybe they just fell out of favor with it. But yeah, basically with how the match sort of like came to its conclusion, we do have Lesnar having utilized the Kimura lock earlier on, which I mentioned as well a moment ago. That's when the match sort of like started to turn up a little bit more of a notch. And Triple H gets to lock his own Kimura lock in after capitalizing on catching Lesnar, who went straight into the ring post. Heyman does attempt to try and help Lesnar out of the Kimura. He's sort of like barking, orders on the outside of the ring, trying to give advice, whatever. Being just Paul Heyman, I guess you could say. And it gets to a stage where he actually gets into the ring and grabs a steel chair. He's looking to go and interrupt that Kimura lock, but he gets hit by a sweet chin music from Shawn Michaels instead. Lesnar keeps on slamming Triple H onto the steel steps, eventually trying to get out of the Kimura lock. And he gets to a point where we think actually he slammed Triple H so hard that the move was released. But actually, in fact, Triple H sort of adjusting to the situation. He turns the slam onto the steel steps into a DDT and plants Lesnar headfirst onto the steel steps. So that sort of like sends him sort of like out of the out of commission for that point. We then see moments later a pedigree from Triple H onto the steps to get the victory. So yeah, it was a decent finish, and the match started off decently well. It's just that bit in the middle. There was a lot of like bits just like here and there, like really slow burning stuff. The steel taps were used quite often, and did note that down here. Shawn Michaels' presence was a bit strange on the outside, just almost running away from Lesnar on a load of opportunities and occasions. And yeah, besides that, it was just yeah, not really much else to really talk about throughout those middle stages. But yeah, it was a weird feeling match. It was good at the start, good at the end. It was just extremely dull and lackluster in that middle bit. But for what it's worth, I actually did quite enjoy it. Despite all of that, I gave it a 7 out of 10. So I guess saying that, if that middle bit was at least interesting, it could have been, a lot higher. But I think the fans reflected my personal sort of like feelings towards this one because they felt similarly by the sounds of it. So I guess there's only one question left, Nick. Did you feel the same way as myself and the thousands of people in the arena? Did you find that middle bit really sort of hard to stay interested in, or was it all right for yourself?
So funny enough, the factoid I have here could possibly play a part into what you're saying, and that middle part being kind of slow. Apparently, at the beginning of this match, the part when Triple H first got slammed to the stairs, I think he kind of got hit harder than he thought. I think he had some kind of injuries from this match from Brock's offense, and go figure. Yeah, so maybe that played a part. I think Brock also got hit once from Triple H towards the beginning of this match, and that kind of he doesn't remember a couple minutes of this match either. So probably Brock giving him a receipt is just knowing him. That's probably what happened there. But obviously, you have to take all of that with a grain of salt. But apparently, there were some things like that. In this matchup, so could absolutely kind of play part to that slower metal part. But so I think essentially, I think what I'm hearing is this match kind of went on too long, and I kind of would agree with that. But I really do thoroughly enjoy this contest. Just the dynamic was very interesting for me. Obviously, Triple H, the wrestler that I hated most as a kid, but as I've gotten older, come to grow and respect what he did and kind of his character work. Although, I still would argue he shouldn't have won as many matches as he did, but and beaten some of the people he did, but can respect kind of what his career did. On the other hand, Brock Lesnar, who I hate as an adult, and that hasn't really changed. I've not really grown to respect him. So the dynamic here was interesting. That trademark sledgehammer there at the end. Triple H tried to. Everyone always pops for the sledgehammer. It's so famous. It's so iconic at this point. That sweet chin music from Heyman, or to Heyman from Sean. That was all time. That was a great bit as well. And all it took for Triple H to beat Brock Lesnar was a sledgehammer and a pedigree to the steel steps. Um, that's all it took for him to slay the beast. I would argue one of the better matches of Brock Lesnar's career. It wasn't quite to the point where all he did was suplexes, but he did a lot. He did a fair few amount, but he had a little more in his repertoire at this point, other than a suplex and an F5. I haven't quite reached that point of his career yet, but I thought this was a pretty good contest. Triple H getting the win here. I actually did agree with that one. You know, having Brock come back is kind of the UFC bit. But yeah, I gave this one an 8 out of 10. I did enjoy the match, and this is kind of a tough spot. We've hit on this in previous manias. That penultimate match, the one right before the main event, has notoriously been a really bad spot. Like lots of matches you couldn't care less about. But I thought this was, in that spot, between Taker Punk and the main event. That's a tough card to be dealt. But I think these guys did the best that they could, and I think 8 out of 10 is not terrible. So pretty decent contest from my end. With that, let's go ahead and get into the main event, which, of course, once again has John Cena going up against The Rock for the WWE Championship. I have to ask, obviously, KP, which do you prefer? And what did you make of this one? And yeah, main event of WrestleMania 29. So good, they had to do it twice in a lifetime. Curious to get your thoughts on this one.
Well, I don't think I'm in the minority. I think I'm with most other people in the same opinion on this one. But I did prefer their match in the previous WrestleMania 28, compared to this one. This one was a decent match though. It was still pretty good. It had that big fight feel to it with the WWE title being on the line, which is obviously very, very important. And the match had a steady pace to it for the majority as well. We do see a bit where I guess the importance really does pick up in those late stages, and it sort of like becomes almost like a larger than life sort of last like 10 maybe minutes or so. So it did have that sort of like really dramatic sort of late few moments. The only thing about that though is that it does kind of come as a sort of a double-edged sword type thing, because although it did have a lot of drama in those late stages, unfortunately it felt like a bit of a finisher fest as well. Those last 10 minutes was literally just essentially the same 2 or 3 moves being attempted by both men over and over and over and over again until eventually the match came to a conclusion and ended. So yeah, I thought I wasn't a particularly big fan of the way this one went down towards those closing moments, because of it just felt like it was a bit lazy. But yeah, it was a decent matchup, like I said. We did see a lot of rock bottoms and actually adjustment attempts, and they did a playback to last year where Cena tried the people's elbow on the Rock, and he tried it again this year, and instead of actually going for it, he just held himself back on the ropes. Same thing happened. Rock got up, expecting to sort of hit him with a rock bottom. But instead of hitting him, then Cena does sort of like stick on the ropes, and he's sort of like sticking it to the Rock. But he gets then immediately rock bottomed afterwards anyway. So this time he kicks out though. So yeah, it would be a case of just John Cena hitting a really last ditch attempt attitude adjustment to get the victory in this contest. And I think everybody sort of knew it was coming to a close as soon as it happened, because it was just so quick to get it out and to get it done. After having a fair few teasers prior to this one of their latest finisher from this fest. So, yeah, we do see John Cena win back his WWE Championship. The year that he went through, he sort of said that, the loss to Rock last year sent him on this downward spiral. He got, mauled by other people during his year, had some really bad luck, and yeah, just eventually sort of picked things back up again and got to this point now where obviously he won the title back. So, yeah, got his win over Rock as well. So it's a big moment for him, but I did prefer their match from last year. Saying that though, I did give this one a 7.5 out of 10. It had that sort of big fight energy to it, which is great, but it wasn't like an all-time classic in my opinion. Their match felt big enough last year for it to be their only contest, and I think it probably should have been as well. But yeah, it was just it wasn't quite as good, but it was still good. That's what I will say. Nick, that's the main comparison. Whenever everyone probably talks about this contest, they think, oh well, the match from 28 was better. Do you share that opinion with everybody else? And what did you make of that? I described Finisher Fest. Did you agree with that assessment, or do you think it played into the match, the closing stages quite nicely, and it was sort of like a good way of doing things? I called it lazy, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think obviously the kind of big fight feel is diminished when you do, the same main event from the year prior. I think that probably plays a part, obviously, with the fans. You're going to expect something different. And it really wasn't outside of the finisher fest, as you alluded to at the end there. Um, it was I feel like I enjoyed this one more than the first one. I don't have that nostalgia factor to weigh in. I feel like I enjoyed this match more, and I can't quite put my finger on it. Maybe it was just a better wrestling match. I'm not really sure, but obviously it is going to be watered down. And crowd here clearly still kind of giving Cena the Rock treatment from the Rock Hogan is kind of what I think I use that exact phrasing for 28, and kind of a similar vibe here. This time with Cena getting the win, I think is the right call. But yeah, I found it entertaining. You had The Rock, or he, excuse me, you had Cena try to do the people's elbow bit, is what it cost him last year, and he did that bit, and then he kind of held on to the ropes, knowing that The Rock was going to jump up, and did the "you can't see me" bit. I thought that was fun. But yeah, overall it's not a terrible match. It's not near as bad as I think people give it, you know, credit for. I just found myself enjoying it. Is it one of the best WrestleMania main events of all time? No, obviously not. It's far from it. But it's just if it's just a decent contest. I too gave this one a 7.5 out of 10. Um, you know, uh, the after the match, you have The Rock kind of showing off respect for Cena. I think that's the right call as well. And I guess The Rock was injured in this contest as well, so take that for what it's worth, I guess too. Yeah, I didn't hate this match. It doesn't deserve the hate it gets. I think the hate just kind of revolves around the fact that they did it twice. Obviously, that was lazy. But in terms of the match itself and what we got, yeah, I didn't hate it. I thought it was decent enough. 7.5 out of 10 isn't terrible. So, with that, overall, WrestleMania 29. KP, curious to get your thoughts, kind of your best and worst matches, if you will, and maybe your overall rating. And we'll go ahead and get this one wrapped up.
Yeah, it's a WrestleMania that's also got a very interesting vibe to it when it comes to your highs and your low points. My low point being Mark Henry and Ryback. 3.5 is what I gave that one in the end, like I said earlier. And then also we've got the high point, which is Undertaker and CM Punk being my match of the night. So I think that was what you said yours was as well. Yeah, and rightfully so. It was a great contest between both men. Which obviously came out as a 9 out of 10. So yeah, it didn't really hit like the absolute heights that we have seen in like previous WrestleManias with like your unbelievable, unforgettable dream match sort of thing. In like Triple H Taker or Shawn Michaels Taker, whatever. But there was a match that was very, very good, and it was just shy of that. So still something really, really great. And if that was the main event, I wouldn't have complained either. It's just a great match to end on, and the crowd would have been, having like a really sort of like a crazy last match to enjoy sort of thing. But I guess putting them where they did sort of give them some hope that the crowd would be hyped up for the rest of the show. And there were bits where they sort of like did die off a little bit in parts. But yeah, just generally speaking, it was a decent WrestleMania. There were some matches that I didn't overly like particularly enjoy, but I mean, looking through the ratings that I gave, I've definitely seen worse WrestleManias. So it could have been a lot worse. Overall, my average does come up to a 6.5 out of 10, which I think a lot of them do come out as, to be fair, for me personally. But yeah, this one's sort of like the latest to really hit that sort of like mark. And yeah, I think that's a fair representation because, yeah, there were some like decent matches in there, and there was also that really good match as well. So yeah, not a bad WrestleMania, by no means the worst, but was a fun one in parts for sure. Nick, what did you make of this one though? There's a lot to be said about it. Obviously you got the repeat main event, and obviously you got your low point, you got your high point, bits in between. But yeah, anything else that really needs sort of like a note on that haven't really glossed over, or is it basically the same thing?
Well, on paper, this didn't, you know, doesn't look like a good WrestleMania, in my opinion. Just not enough on there. I think without those last three matches, I think you have a real stinker of a Mania. Just not that they were terrible matches. We've like you said, we've had WrestleManias with much more lower rated matches. Um, this one didn't have those. It had just bunch of average matches, but just didn't feel like the WrestleMania kind of stage. But yeah, for me, worst match obviously is also Mark Henry and Ryback coming in at a 3 for me. But the last three matches, Punk, Undertaker, Lesnar, Triple H, and Cena Rock, absolutely saved the rating. If you take out those three, you're looking at a well below average. Um, for the Mania stage. But because of those last three and everything else, the lows weren't quite as low as we've seen historically on the WrestleMania stage. So just kind of the definition of average is really what kind of kept it higher. So the overall rating for me ends up being a 6.5 out of 10. I think I actually enjoyed the Brock Lesnar Triple H match, obviously indicated by the rating, more than the Cena Rock match. But neither were all time, but both were quality in my opinion. Then obviously, once again, the highlight belonging to the Undertaker and CM Punk. Holding on to that undefeated streak at 21-0. We have a very difficult conversation coming up very soon. But yeah, 21-0, just incredible career for Taker and an incredible once again match on the WrestleMania stage. So, with that, enough about us. What did you all make of WrestleMania 29? We'd love to hear from you. What were your highlights? What were your least favorite matches? And what did you make of the twice in a lifetime match with Cena and The Rock? Curious to hear all your thoughts below. Of course, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button as that helps us out tremendously. But for now, this has been the latest episode of The Push with Nick and KP. Until next time, we'll see you soon. Take care.